Hi there, everyone. This is week 5, and this is going to be our reading break at the end of this week. So this will be a little bit of a shortened week. Let me just start off by saying it's a little bit unclear in the syllabus, but for Monday, you are finishing the Ramayana. So you've got about 50 more pages to read, and you'll get to the conclusion of that. And then on Wednesday, we're going to watch and discuss a video, Sita Sings the Blues. And I'll post that on our Moodle site. It's a interesting contemporary version of the Ramayana. So that's what's happening. I want to give a lecture today, not on the Ramayana, but on Hindu temples. We're going to see and learn a little bit more about the practice of Hinduism when we get to our book 9 Lives, about different lives and religious traditions within India. That'll be in the second half of the class. But I want to talk about, just to give you some sense of what Hindu ritual and worship would look like. You'll notice that in the Ramayana, we're not getting a lot of description of temples and places of worship. There's a mention right at the beginning of our reading of Lakshmana building an ashram, which is like a spiritual retreat. So there's some sense that there are built structures and institutions for the Hindu religion, but we're not getting too much about that. And what I would think about is that these epics were written when Hinduism was already well established. So there's already a tradition of temple building, of shrines, of representation of the gods, that those things already exist. What the epics are really good at is showing the kind of the stakes of this religious tradition. What is it? What is duty? What is honor? What do we owe to each other? How should we act in certain situations? That it's kind of putting the religion into so people can imagine their life and their situations in this ethical way. But it's taking place within a well-developed physical and tradition where there are temples, there are shrines. And so there's no need to say, this is what they should look like. That's kind of assumed knowledge. Now, Hindu shrines are somewhat different than what you might expect if you're coming from, say, a Christian or Muslim background, where you think of the prime work of a church or a mosque is often to simply put a roof over a lot of believers. All right. And believers who come on a weekly basis, maybe that's a Friday, maybe that's a Saturday, a Sabbath, or maybe that's a Sunday, and listen to a service and participate as a congregation. Hindu temples are not, obviously, as you can see from the image behind me, there are times of gathering and festivals, but they're not so, there's not such an emphasis on like a sermon or a weekly gathering. They are also places where you come to do individual worship, and that'll be what I mean by that will be clear as we move forward in the pictures. So in other words, the central shrine that we'll encounter within a Hindu temple is a place where individuals come and offer their worship to the god. All right, and there's 2 words that I want you to kind of get in your head. One is puja. This is the worship or the offering that is brought to the gods. This can be in the form of flowers and coconuts. We'll see an example of that in just a moment. Nice, beautiful things that are brought and offered at the shrine to the gods. And the other one is murti, which is the image of the god within a temple. And this is not the god, as in this is, the stone is the god, but rather this is a place where the god is present and manifest. And that becomes the center for worship for the god, the place where puja is brought and offered. All right. There's more to say about Hindu worship, but I just want to get those 2 words for you: puja and murti. Puja, the offering; murti, the idol or the image of the god. All right. Let me go to a series of pictures. I'm going to share my screen. Give me just a sec. Okay. This is a Hindu temple, an ancient one that's located in Indonesia. It's not, it's currently kind of an archaeological park, but it gives us a chance to kind of move back in time and think about how Hindu temples um, functioned. So what you have here is a series of towers or shrines. And these were places that housed uh, the god. So in the center we had Shiva, and then you had Brahma and Vishnu as well, this kind of triad of important Hindu gods. Here's another closer look at this. And what would have been originally around these central shrines would have been lots of subsidiary temples. All right. And now they're just ruins. So they've kind of piled the rocks up so you can kind of see where these were. There would have been just dozens of smaller temples around. So you can imagine, lots of people coming, performing rituals at the smaller temples, and then winding up as you get to the large central temples in the middle. All right. These are all sites of worship and sites of um, uh, uh, homage to the gods. Now, the whole setup is in Hindu temples is very symbolic, and it's kind of almost geometric in the way that its sacred space is laid out. So here you get kind of an overview of this space in Indonesia. We have at the middle these central three towers on the left, one for Vishnu on top, up here. Then we've got Shiva here in the middle, and then Brahma over on the side. There's different around in different places where Hinduism is the majority. There's different emphases within Hinduism. In fact, it's something of a debate as to what extent Hinduism is a unitary religion, right? And what we see historically is just lots of different emphases in terms of where, what are the kind of primary god of worship and how that's done. So in this Indonesian version from about 1,000 years ago, we see Shiva being kind of at the center of this version of Hinduism. But if you read the Ramayana, of course, Vishnu takes a very central place, and Vishnu is present here. But you see here, what I want you to see is this kind of geometric layout of the sacred space. Now, these shrines, these vertical shrines, and that's something to consider for a moment. I think when we think about mosques or churches or synagogues, it's they're kind of halls and spaces for seating and people. And the Hindu temples are more vertically oriented, and they're not made for masses of people. The temple complex as a whole might have a lot of people, but these shrines themselves are for people to come in, visit, and do their worship to the gods. So here's kind of a cutout, so you can see the central shrine from this Prambanan in Indonesia. And you see how there's a series of stairs, right? So you're kind of rising up off of the ground, and you're entering this space, this raised space of the gods. And it's here that humans and the divine meet in front of the statue for Shiva. And then up above are also these space that is connected to the cosmos, the upper layers of the world. So what I want to kind of point out is the way these temples kind of mirror the cosmos. So worship and participation in this is a way of leaving the earth, coming to this meeting place with the gods, and also participating in a building that itself models the way the cosmos is structured. Now, as you look at the building, you'll see all kinds of images of gods. that are and sages that are posted around. And I wouldn't be able to tell you who these ones are here in Indonesia at this time, but that's what's on the outside of the shrine, this vertical shrine. If you go inside, here is the this kind of central murti, the image or the idol where the god is manifest. And this is where your primary place of worship would be, the most sacred place of worship. These are more images from the outside, this kind of volcanic rock that you have in Indonesia, and then beautiful statues. Now, as you get to this level, kind of, you can walk around this kind of central shrine. And what you'll see are, on this lower level, are images of stories. And you see some straight ahead, you'll see some monkeys. And of course, that should set off in your head Ramayana, right? Because we have Hanuman, we have these monkey army. So here we're in some story related to the Ramayana. Here's a better image of those monkey warriors. Here's another image. So this is a way you can see how from 1,000 years ago, the extent to which these epics permeated the practice of Hinduism, right? So worshipers would come, they would do their puja, they would visit the shrine, but around them would be these images of stories that they knew. Much like if you visit a church and there's stained glass windows with the story of Jesus and stuff like that, you're kind of participating and reliving in your head, at least your imagination, these stories. And here we have these central epic stories represented in stone around the temple. This is also another image from that temple. And here we have Ravenna taking Sita. And then remember the eagle that is, that Jatayu, who meets them, is over on the left. So this is actually, you can kind of figure out exactly where you're at in the story of the Ramayana. It's another reminder just of the centrality of these epics for the Hindu experience in history. All right, now we're moving places. Moving to another site. This is in Pune. This is in India. I would recommend for everyone to try to study abroad. I know that's hard to imagine with the COVID-19 and our quarantine, but this is an intro to religious studies course, and you all have a number of years ahead of you, and it's going to be possible. You will, believe it or not, be able to study abroad in the future. And India is a great space to do that. And I visited one of our study abroad programs over in India, and gave me a chance to kind of see this kind of the practice of Hinduism up close. One thing I was fascinated by was all the kind of roadside shrines that you run into. And this is Ganesh. So in Pune, Ganesh is probably a central focus of worship for this region, and is an elephant-headed god. And here is Ganesh, and you can see the flowers hanging around it. In the daytime, those doors are open, and if you're in the neighborhood or work around here, you can bring your worship, your puja, and complete that here. Here's a better image of Ganesh. And as many of you have realized, there's a multiplicity of gods, right? I think there's a high level of Hinduism where there's a kind of a philosophical unity and understanding, but what you witness and feel within Hinduism is the multiplicity, the diversity of the expressions of divinity. And this is an example of that here with Ganesh. And you feel that in the Ramayana as well. I visited the home of some Jains. We'll talk about Jainism in a few weeks, but if up above, you can see up here kind of a small statue, which would make you recognize that we're in a kind of a Jain household. But even within the Jain household, you have this small statue of Ganesh. So this, which kind of is a regional focus for worship. This is another kind of outside a home, much like you'd have a Packers sign outside a home in Wisconsin. Here you get Ganesh just everywhere, right? It's almost I'd almost invite you to think of it as a regional, gods have different roles, but one way is to kind of mark regional identity, where there's different emphases for different gods. Here we're going into the kind of downtown Pune, a very kind of lively, crowded place, and we're going to run into a temple here. This is another temple of Ganesh. So what do you notice? Of course, the verticality, right? This is a map of the cosmos, and that's common to all Hindu temples, is this attempt to kind of map the cosmos in this architecture. Now, on the kind of central level, you have this beautiful gilded statue of Ganesh. And it's a crowded place, but what I want you to see is that it's crowded because there's a lot of people filing through to offer their individual puja. It's not like everyone's sitting here and waiting for some kind of big service. It is that this is a sacred space, and there's turnstiles, and people are slowly coming through and offering their worship, their puja, at this murti, at this image where the divine is present. And this becomes this space where the divine and the human can interface and meet. Here's another image of that gilded Ganesh. This was done by a wealthy businessman. I think it was, I forget the year, but it was like 100 years ago. There was a wealthy businessman who wanted to give back to the gods for his success. And he funded this large temple to Ganesh in the city of Pune. Here is, before you enter the temple, you have these guys sitting out, and they're offering these little baskets. And this is the puja. This is what you would buy. And I bought one and offered it, of course. And see flowers, coconut, this is something beautiful and meaningful that you leave as you give thanks or make a request for Ganesh. So why were all these people here? Well, this didn't happen to be a special day. There's a festival for Ganesh, and that would be, of course, massive numbers of people. But maybe you have a new business venture. Maybe you're getting married. Maybe there's someone sick in your family. For all these reasons, you as an individual would come to the temple and offer worship, and then you would ask for success in your business venture, for health for someone, for whatever it is that's on your mind as an individual. This is where you would come, and through your offering, be able to ask the god for that favor. Here's another look at the puja. And you might want to take something home, right? So I'm always fascinated by the kind of gift shops that are around sacred spaces. But here are images of Ganesh and images of other important figures as well. All right, now we're switching space again, and I want to go to London. And this is the Neasden Temple. And when I was with students in London in the fall, we went to this Hindu temple. They didn't let us take pictures inside, so I kind of got to just look at this external one. But you can see there the temple, and that doesn't look that far away from the temples we've been looking at. Again, you've got the kind of verticality, and as you enter into that space, you're surrounded by images of the gods, and it's a place to offer puja and to worship. Now you see all these little tents and everything over here. Diwali was coming up, and so they were going to have a huge celebration, right? So that's a community celebration. But you'll notice that that's within the temple complex as a whole. There's space for these kind of communal meetings and festivals. But the shrine, the sacred space itself, doesn't work like that. That's where you and other individuals go when you need help or when you need to ask for something. That's where you would go. And there are lots of smaller scale shrines and temples as well. This is more of a shrine, but this is just in a neighborhood in London, and it obviously kind of stands out from its very common things that are surrounding it. And this is a temple for the South Asian community that's in this area. And then as you walk inside, this is what you see. Again, it's not a place where there would be throngs of people, but it's a place where you would come, where individuals can come and worship and leave your offering. And as you look around, you'll see the Murtis. This is Hanuman. You can see with the monkey features, you know who you're, that's an easy one to pick out. And here's what I want you to write about for Monday, is take the god Rama, the character of Rama. Look, just do a quick internet search of Rama and look for some of the images of Rama. And what is it, how is he being symbolized? What are the elements that allow you to recognize Rama, right? You'll notice, and I've mentioned before, the blue skin, that's a feature of he's an avatar of Vishnu, and that kind of Vishnu presence is shown in that blue skin. But what else? What would be the elements that if I showed you an image, you'd say, that's Rama? How would you know it? And I think there's a handful of kind of symbols that you always see associated with Rama and that set him apart. And all the different divine figures have, you need to be able to tell them apart. And if and in places like this, where there's lots of different gods, a main one, but maybe lots of subsidiary ones, it's these things that allow you to pick them out and know who you're looking at. So look at Rama. How would you know and recognize Rama? What are the symbols that set him apart? That's your question for Monday and what you'll respond to. I'll also put up a question box. So as you're finishing up the Ramayana, think about what confuses you about the end. What are you kind of upset about, or you were interested in as you read it? Okay, so put something in the question box. Answer this question about Rama, and that's for Monday. All right. I will talk to you all later.